These are non-citizens that are getting Social Security numbers.
Yeah, this is a mind-blowing chart. Yeah. People sometimes think that under the Biden administration that he was simply asleep at the switch. He wasn't asleep. No. They weren't asleep at the switch. It was a massive, large-scale program to import as many illegals as possible, ultimately to change the entire voting map of the United States and disenfranchise the American people and make it a permanent, deep blue, one-party state from which there would be no escape.
Every accusation is a confession. And you know what's so brilliant about that tactic is that if you then say, wait, no, that's what you're doing, you sound crazy, right? So this is exactly what Elon Musk is doing and Trump is doing. In this video, Krystal Ball of Breaking Points does her usual great job. I am a big fan of Krystal Ball and of Breaking Points, and of Kyle Kalinske, but particularly of Krystal Ball. Despite the sort of, I mean, it's her name, but it is, is that a joke? Krystal Ball? Anyway, she is great. And Elon Musk and Trump are very clearly, they're doing it. They're saying the quiet part out loud. They're trying to rig the elections. Of course, Trump has been saying that the elections have been rigged all along. False. They have not. That is what they are currently trying to do. And Krystal Ball in this video breaks down precisely the way in which that will operate. It's connected to Doge. I'm not going to spoil anymore. Let's watch the video together. I'll have some other comments to add, and then I want to know what you think in the comments section.
This week, Elon Musk took time out of his vote-buying spree to announce a new lie about supposed Social Security fraud. Now, this lie happens to kill two birds with one stone, serving as it does to feed his attacks on Social Security, which he, of course, derides as a Ponzi scheme, and his attacks on our electoral system, portraying it as being rife with fraud. Take a listen to Elon's longtime close associate and new Social Security official, Antonio Gracias. He is claiming that millions of non-citizens are receiving Social Security cards and that the existence of these immigrant Social Security cards is proof that they are receiving fraudulent benefits and that Democrats were allowing non-citizens to vote in order to rig elections. Listen to what he has to say, and then I'll tell you the facts on the other side.
This is what jumped out at us. When we saw these numbers, we were like, what is this? In 21, you see 270,000 people, goes all the way to 2.1 million in 24. These are non-citizens that are getting Social Security numbers.
Yeah, this is a mind-blowing chart. Yeah. People sometimes think that under the Biden administration that he was simply asleep at the switch. He wasn't asleep. No. They weren't asleep at the switch. It was a massive, large-scale program to import as many illegals as possible, ultimately to change the entire voting map of the United States and disenfranchise the American people and make it a permanent, deep blue, one-party state from which there would be no escape.
Look, if I hadn't seen this myself, I'm not sure I'd have believed it. I went through it myself and mapped it. And Elon is right. This is true. The defaults in the system from Social Security to all of the benefit programs have been set to max inclusion, max pay for these people, and minimum collection. That's what's happening. We found 1.3 million of them already on Medicaid, as an example. We've gone through, on every benefit program we went through, we found groups from this particular group of people, this 5.5 million people in those benefit programs. And then what was really, really disturbing us was why. We're asking ourselves why. Right. And so we actually just took a sample and looked at voter registration records. And we found people here registered to vote in this population, yes.
And who did vote.
And we found some by sampling that actually did vote. And we have referred them to prosecution at the Homeland Security Investigation Service.
Yeah.
Already, that is already happening.
All right, so you should take all of those claims with a lot of skepticism, but here's what you should know about the facts with regard to immigrants and Social Security. So legal immigrants can apply for Social Security numbers is through a program. One of the programs is called Enumeration Beyond Entry, so they can work and pay taxes, which of course you want people to be paying taxes. Here is what those particular Social Security cards look like. You can see that they say valid for work only with DHS authorization, meaning that they explicitly bar voting in elections, which is, of course, a right reserved in our Constitution for citizens. Having a Social Security card also doesn't guarantee you Social Security benefits. Only those who qualify, pay into the program, are then eligible for benefits. Undocumented immigrants pay billions of dollars into Social Security every year, but they don't receive Social Security numbers and they are not eligible for benefits. Gracias also claims that some of these non-citizens with Social Security numbers are voting and have been referred for prosecution. I'll believe that when I see it.
I just want to pause for 1 second because she's saying that glibly. That's a thing we say. But as she will go on to explain, they assert this and they have big charts and they say it again and again, and they are spectacular lies. There is no evidence. Trump was thrown out of court, blah, 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 blah. It's quite the opposite. There's an enormous amount of evidence to the contrary. But that doesn't stop them from telling these big, bold lies. They keep telling the same lies. There is no evidence of them. There is a mountain of evidence to the contrary.
Republicans have been on a decades-long quest to find mass voter fraud, especially among non-citizens and undocumented immigrants, and they have completely failed. You might recall, in Trump's first term, he was very salty that Hillary Clinton had won the popular vote. So he claimed that millions of illegal immigrants had voted illegally for him, and he went so far as to appoint Krystal Ball to a commission that was charged with locating this fraud. They completely failed. In the end, the commission quietly closed up shop without finding a single instance of illegal alien voting, let alone the millions that Trump claimed. A draft of that commission's final report was revealed. It contained nothing more than a list of blank categories of potential fraud. Not one instance had actually been identified. Now, Elon's lies about Social Security and voter fraud, though, are not out of stupidity. They're part of a larger coordinated plan, the other piece of which clicked into place last week. So somewhat lost amid last week's Signalgate debacle, Trump signed an executive order on elections. Now, the bulk of what the order demanded is actually illegal. In particular, the order requires that voters not only attest to their citizenship, which they must already do, but also provide some documentary proof, something like a passport. This is directly at odds with the National Voter Registration Act. In fact, Arizona previously tried to add such a requirement and had their law struck down by the Supreme Court in a 7-2 ruling. What's more, the Constitution makes clear that what election rules are not left to the states are to be handled by Congress, not by the executive branch. But what really caught my eye in the executive order wasn't so much the proof of citizenship requirement, which, like I said, is probably going to be blocked from being fully implemented. It was the announcement that Trump is putting Elon Musk's Doge at the center of our elections. So the TLDR is this. This executive order would put the richest man on the planet, who is obviously a radicalized partisan, in a position to say who gets a vote and who does not get a vote. And his say would be enforced by a Trump administration that has already proved itself ready and willing to put states through hell in order to force their compliance. It's a playbook for shifting the country from a democracy towards what some experts call a hybrid regime, where we may still have democratic institutions in form, but not really truly in substance. Now, Elon's repeated lies about non-citizens voting and Trump's executive order giving Elon say over who can vote are a coordinated effort to hobble democracy. All right, here is the key provision. You can see it there up on the screen. Department of Homeland Security, in coordination with the Doge administrator, shall review each state's publicly available voter registration list and available records concerning voter list maintenance activities as required by this section, alongside federal immigration databases and state records requested, including through subpoena where necessary and authorized by law for consistency with federal requirements. So, what that means in plain language is that it's directing the Doge administrator to review every state's voter registration list, using subpoenas if necessary, to force the states to hand over their data to identify lists of supposedly non-compliant voters. Now, similar efforts have been tried at a smaller scale on the state level, and so we can know what the expected results would be. Here is investigative journalist Greg Palast talking about how state efforts to match voter rolls and make sure the same people weren't registered in multiple states has ended up in practicality in mass disenfranchisement.
One of the things that they apparently want to resurrect is a Krystal Ball. Again, this is the right-wing AG who's really the brains behind the Heritage Foundation and Trump administration attack on voter rolls. And he had a program which was struck down by the courts, and I'll take some credit for that because of my expose in Rolling Stone, and called Interstate Crosscheck. Now, what this is they take lists of voters from two states, Arizona and Texas, and they say, oh, Jose Hernandez voted in Arizona, and there's a Jose Hernandez that voted in Texas. It must be the same guy voting twice. So we're going to remove their registrations. Because we have a double registered voter. Now you might say, well, Jose Hernandez is a common name. It's not necessarily for a Republican. But so here's the story. So they were literally, Chris Kobach created lists, cross-check lists of names state to state. For example, they said one guy named James Brown in Georgia voted 238 times. I'm not making this up, by the way. So they remove all these James Browns. They know what they're doing. By the way, fun fact, 90% of all of the 100 most common surnames in America, 90% are majority minority names.
So what's more, Kansas also instituted that proof of citizenship requirement back in 2011. The stated goal was to root out mass voting by immigrants. They found next to none of that, but they did keep 31,000 eligible U.S. citizens from being able to cast ballots. That was 12% of the entire population that was trying to register during the relevant period. Now, Doge and AI, obviously, they could put those efforts on steroids. And remember Elon's mindset here. His ketamine-addled brain thinks he's on some civilizational mission to save humanity. He's already demonstrated his willingness to do anything from letting the elderly starve without Social Security payments to sacrificing kids with HIV in Africa to defying court orders and running roughshod over our constitutional system in order to accomplish his goals. Now, in the same way Doge hacked into the Treasury, Doge has been given now the green light to hack into our national election systems and bend the voter rolls to Elon's will. Do you think he's going to carefully root out fraud? Of course not. We've seen the insane, dishonest, and bungling ways that Elon and Doge operate. They claimed millions were going to condoms in the Gaza Strip. Complete lie. They claimed research money was funding transgender mice. Another lie. They claimed the Department of the Interior spent $1 billion on a single survey. Also a lie. He is literally the #1 liar on his own platform in the entire world. And trust me, people, it is a very high bar over there. So he and his apparatchiks will get access to all his voter data, spin a remarkable fairy tale of mass fraud, and get a huge purge of legitimate voters. Now, traditionally, these voter suppression efforts target black voters because they are the most likely to vote for Democrats. But if Elon wanted to, he could use AI to get even fancier. He's got plenty of data pulled from across the federal government to discern who is a Democratic voter and who is a Republican voter with a very high level of certainty. He will run through the data, and in an intentionally dishonest and idiotic way, as Doge has done at Social Security and other places, he will then present to states a list of voters that they should block. Now, Republican-led states, they are likely to go along enthusiastically with this plan and with Elon's efforts to purge voter rolls of suspected Democrats. And there are plenty of swing districts in Republican-led states. So what about the Democratic states? How will they react? Well, Trump has already proven willing to use the entire federal government apparatus to bully Democratic states into going along with his dictates. He and Elon will likely provide the narrative fuel by loudly and repeatedly claiming that the resistance of these states to purging voter rolls is because they're corrupt and want to keep their elections rigged. This is, of course, a complete inversion of the truth, as Elon and Trump's efforts will be directly aimed at rigging the results for Republicans. Now, I don't know how these states would ultimately react. I guess most will resist, although civil society and Democratic Party resistance to Trump 2.0 has been less than inspiring. But 27 states have Republican governors. They're going to try to do whatever Trump and Elon want them to do. And even if only these states fell in line, you could be talking about tens of millions of voters kicked off of the voter rolls and blocked from the ballot box. Not to mention that the whole loud effort, amplified on X and by every brain-dead MAGA influencer in the world to cast every race as rigged, is going to be deeply damaging to our ability to persist as a democracy, since that status does depend on people broadly accepting election results as fair. And that, too, is really part of the goal. Now, watching the Trump administration in action, you sometimes get the feeling they really don't think they're ever going to have to face voters again. After all, they are brazenly attacking the most popular programs in the country, like Social Security and Medicaid. They are pushing an economic policy that is threatening a system-wide collapse. They are threatening new, wildly unpopular wars in places like Mexico and Greenland, and a complete ethnic cleansing in Gaza. Yet not only are the midterms just around the electoral corner, but Trump himself is promising to run for a third term. Elon's lies and Trump's executive order are the first hints of a potential playbook to make sure voters never truly get the final say.
Right, and I have begun to feel like a broken record here, but it is a playbook. It is a playbook. It's the Viktor Orban playbook, right? Turkey, Hungary. This is how democracies turn into autocracies. They undermine the judiciary. They undermine the election process. They continue to hold elections, but the elections are actually rigged. And so Trump has been screaming, and Elon Musk has been saying that the elections are rigged so much and so loudly and so frequently that when Krystal Ball or someone like me says they're trying to rig the elections, everyone everywhere rolls their eyes because they are sick of hearing it. And that is precisely the point. That is why they are screaming it. They are flooding the zone with this, they're making the words sound meaningless, but it is literally what they are doing. Read the executive orders. And if they succeed, if they purge a bunch of voters from the rolls right before the election, and enough states kind of go along with it, then the election happens and it goes the Republicans' way, and then was like, well, we'll sort it out in the courts. But the courts never go back and undo an election, right? So the damage will have been done. The courts are slow and they are fast. So they're not worried about it because that's fine. We'll put a grenade in there right before the thing. It'll end up going, it'll work. And then while everybody is sort of afterwards screaming, hey, that wasn't fair, it'll be too late because, the ship will continue sailing, having been rigged, and they won't be able to stop us then. They won't be able to unscrew it. It's pretty dire stuff. And it's one thing to be thinking about, oh, these guys are trying to steal our country. But now that they're actually signing these executive orders and we're getting close enough to it that you can sort of see the rest of the plan, then you think, oh my gosh, this is very, very bad. And it is, folks. Let me know what you think in the comments.